Welcome to the Smart Connector, the podcast that helps entrepreneurs be the leader their ideal people love. Build your influence, wealth and success, attract others for all the right reasons, and become a smart connector, the architect of your amazing business and life. In this fast-moving and fascinating discussion, Sanjeev Kumar Natalie Torin and myself discuss how the impact of Covid-19 and Brexit have hit SMEs hard, and we look at what can be done about it. Natalie is co-founder of the Bevvie.app, which is a private members club in your pocket, and Redeem, a mobile app providing networking on demand and rewards. She's a business development and tech consultant and influencer in the family office industry, managing investor relations and facilitating partnerships and publicity for technology and healthcare projects. She works with family offices as well as tech companies in the UK, US and the Middle East, and her passion is supporting women's entrepreneurship and diversity in tech. Sanjeev is an award-winning serial entrepreneur and CEO of the Delamore and Owl Group, which is a privately held group of tech and media global companies with operations in over 30 countries. He's also a published author, blogger, and the executive director of Harley Street Healthcare Group, PLC. And this interview touches on some of the pain that so many entrepreneurs have felt over the last year since COVID hit, and offers some support and encouragement for a better way forward. Hello and welcome to the Smart Connector podcast. I've got a couple of amazing guests for you today, Sanjeev Kumar and Natalie Torin. I'm just going to let both of you introduce yourselves in turn. So let's start with Natalie. What are you up to at the moment? What's your business and what are you doing?
Hi, Jane. Thank you. My name is Natalie Torin and I'm based in London. I'm the owner of a consultancy called Kurnon Consulting. We provide business development for expanding companies through executive connections, and we've worked with companies in finance, healthcare, technology, and luxury branding. These sectors have all been thriving and been hit relatively hard at the same time through the Brexit and the pandemic. But what's important is we're collaborating with companies that are finding a way to find out what works and what they can do differently to be more agile. So I'm really looking forward to this discussion to learn from you both about this.
Yes, so this is a discussion on Brexit and the pandemic and the impact that both of them have had really on SMEs. So we're going to get right into that. Sanjeev, tell us about yourself.
Hi, Jane. Is it okay to take permission to introduce myself as I'm Sanjeev, Jane, and Natalie's friend? Can I do that?
Most definitely.
Appreciate that. So thanks for doing this, Jane. Really appreciate it. And thank you, Natalie. I am Sanjeev, a serial entrepreneur, a product of trial and error. We have a number of businesses across the world, traditional business, tech and media business, a hospitality business. And as Natalie was suggesting there, we have businesses that has done well during Brexit. We have businesses that has done well during pandemic. And we also have businesses that are doing pretty badly because of the pandemic, and also there is a real struggle with the Brexit part. Thankfully, we have solved some of our Brexit aftermath because we've been working on it for a number of years. But, pandemic obviously was an unforeseen event, so nobody has planned for it. So we are busy focusing on the world post-pandemic, and that's keeping us all busy.
Yes, indeed. So let's get straight into it, Sanjeev. Thank you so much for introducing yourself. So obviously you have multiple businesses. Natalie, you're consulting with many, many businesses in different sectors. So the first question I'd like to pose to Natalie is, you mentioned that some of your businesses have been affected by Brexit and some of them haven't. So can you elaborate a little bit on that and talk about the sectors that have been hit the hardest and the ones that have been positively impacted by it?
That's a very good question with a very long answer. I think we're just seeing a move away from traditional businesses. Large scale corporations are adapting internally. Smaller companies that are more agile are either, learning how to fail appropriately and move on, or to completely revise their business model if they have the opportunity to. Yeah, you'll see that the luxury sector has been hit hard. I don't know about you, but in finance, I've seen a lot of things move from equity to debt. And in healthcare, if something is directly related to the pandemic, there's a lot of competition, but there are a lot of companies thriving because ultimately people are learning they can do well by doing good. We're more than ever before, I think we've got this mentality that we're all in this together, and we can all succeed if we find out what's actually working right now. And I think people are quietly desperate for that, and they're not necessarily voicing it. It really helps to have a platform in order to be able to do that.
That's a great answer, Natalie. Sanjeev, can I just ask you, how have businesses been affected by, we'll talk about the pandemic in a minute, but what about Brexit? What has been the impact of that? Because Brexit's really been overshadowed by the pandemic, but nevertheless, it has had an impact, both good and bad. So what would you say has been the impact?
The impact is getting established. SMEs are never prepared, unfortunately, because for lack of resources, for lack of bandwidth to focus on, because they have to focus on their earning day-to-day business, and they don't have the capacity to go work with consultants, etc., to help them navigate the entire landscape, where they need to be, what markets they need to be in, and what their relationship with their client might be post Brexit. So a lot of the question has not been answered for them. So I think there is going to be an interesting transition period where there will be a lot of teething issue, and some firms will have to change their business model, will have to change their revenue projection. They will have to kind of redraw their entire business, because if 80-90% of their business was coming from Europe, you're already seeing that impact. And yes, pandemic is also an excuse, but as you rightly said, Jane, there is a real issue here with Brexit. And that's why UK companies are going to struggle to come back, because first, we are still not out of a situation where we know where we are going post Brexit. And on top of that, there is a pandemic. So we'll see how this whole thing gets realigned. I know we'll get into a discussion later on into what's happening on the ground, but I think a lot of the SMEs that I've been talking with, friends of mine, really, they feel helpless. Some of them feel literally angry and let down by the government, because they feel that they didn't get a good guidance from the government. They feel that they were not prepared. They feel that there is a lot of still red tape to export and import from Europe, whether it's goods or services. I think a lot of these SMEs have been hit, and it will take them time. It will take them time, and they will need a helping hand. I just don't know what that helping hand for them will be. So we'll have to wait and see.
Natalie, do you feel that the government has done enough?
That's a very good question. I've lived in the States as well, and it's constantly on everyone's minds. Are people looking for a government bailout, or is it possible for businesses to turn around by themselves? This is a tangent, but something that I'm always reminded of. I saw a lecture last year that through a group I'm part of called the Founders Network, and there was the founder of a $4 billion company that no one's ever heard of because it's used behind credit cards. And he said that 50% of companies, Fortune 500 companies, were created during a downturn. And I think that's always helpful for us to know, because regardless of whether or not there's government help, people have the genuine need to innovate more than ever before. And so I think that's what will turn things around for a lot of people, regardless of how much assistance they get from the government, because that will only be short term anyway. I only see that government support as a plaster. I think the will of the British people and the strength of British business interests will succeed long term. It's just constantly a question of how do we get through this hurdle. I think the furlough scheme, despite how much it has costed, has provided a temporary solution for a lot of larger corporations. There's the option for people who are self-employed to have this one-time payment that I've seen. For SMEs, it's been very challenging. They have limited options. I think the bounce back loan has been helpful. It also has a lot of rules, but the ability to access short-term capital is always a challenge for SMEs when they don't have the revenue numbers they expected. So, sorry, this is a very long answer. But one thing that I think has been particularly challenging for some people I know is that during the progress of the last couple of years, a lot of people I know have left and started small businesses from larger companies. But of course, that's limited them from being able to claim government benefits, from not having a company with a certain revenue amount for the tax year prior to this, when nobody knew this was going to happen. I don't know if the government is aware of the effect on small businesses, but regardless of whether or not they're able to put together a package that's actually going to help further, I think in forums like this, we're going to be more successful doing it ourselves. What do you think? I'd love to know what you both think.
Awesome. Sanjeev, what do you think?
So there are two questions really. One is the Brexit, and one is the pandemic. So the Brexit-induced disruption was kind of, as Natalie said, was predictable. What I feel has happened is, I think, even though people had time, the deal was rushed, as we all know, right? So we are now seeing, as people say, the devil is in the details. So we are now seeing what's happening and what sort of relationship British businesses will have with their European counterparts. So you're already seeing some of the teething problem. I mean, it may not be teething problem. It may be structural changes that has happened. And I think there has to be a realignment, and people will need to kind of get used to the new normal. And that new normal is that, okay, trading will definitely not be seamless. And there, the only help you can get is you have to adapt. You have to adapt very, very quickly. And you have to have processes put in place, the way you would trade with Canada, the way you would trade with the US, Australia, I think. So the rules are just getting understood now. The terms of the bilateral deal is starting to get being understood by SMEs and the consultants and the accountants, etc. And it is now getting passed on to the SMEs. I don't think government ministers themselves yet fully understand what the new terms of engagement are. I mean, and I mean that. I think we also need to give it a bit of time to see. I mean, today, thankfully, I think we are in a lockdown, so a lot of the disruption has not come to the surface. But I think as we get out of this pandemic slowly, we will start to see some of these teething problems, some of these administrative problems, some of these structural issue that has kind of been brought about by Brexit. We'll see that come to the surface, and we'll see how businesses adapt to it, what sort of innovation businesses can bring. But this won't be solved by innovation. This is a legislative issue, right? So if the government policy and the way you trade with your partner has changed, innovation and technology can do it bit. But these are law, these are policies. So we'll see how British businesses adapt. But I agree with Natalie also that I think this disruption will push the companies to go to newer markets, to have a different business model, etc. And we'll have to wait and see. And the second part is obviously the pandemic-induced, a disruption. So this is why I think the road ahead for British businesses is going to be a bit difficult. But we will get out of it. I mean, I'm confident of that. But we have to be also quite clear that it's not going to be a walk in the park for sure.
No, that's very, very true, Sanjeev. I mean, from my perspective, I have an entrepreneurial group on Facebook with 2,700 members. And so I speak to entrepreneurs all the time. And I've noticed that there are some who are genuinely in a very, very difficult situation simply because they just have a business in a certain sector that has just fallen off a cliff. For example, hospitality, events, elements of the real estate sector, like, for example, serviced accommodation. I was working with some guys that had a lot of serviced accommodation properties in central London, for example. And of course, that's all been shut down. They just were not able to rent them out at all. So they have had to pivot very, very fast into new business models. And I've been incredibly impressed to see many of my subscribers and the members of my group that have actually done that. They've started new businesses. They've got new businesses up and running that are very, very successful. But it's been very, very tough on them, I have to say. And then there have been others who really had an online business already. And actually the pandemic and Brexit hasn't really affected that. It's been very good for them. So there have definitely been winners and losers, haven't there?
Oh, you're seeing one of the largest transfers in wealth in recent history. You know, if you're the CEO of Clorox in the US or Dettol in the UK, things are very good right now. If you're in, hotels, for instance, there are a lot of things perhaps beyond your control. But to that end, as you were both saying about pivoting quickly into new business models, I think what's exciting, which will be coming out so much more in the next year, is we're seeing unlikely business partners which are coming together and thriving in ways you couldn't have imagined previously. I'll give you an example of that. I've been working with a company called Fourth Wave Technology, and they're the UK distributor for Korean air sterilization, a company called Radicate. And this company was developed for SARS in 2003. And you'll see that South Korea has been one of the best countries in managing the pandemic just because they have technology that's in use and has been used for prior viruses. This company is being used by 80% of universities and hospitals in South Korea. They're rolling it out in the UK now. And they've just started working with the London Hotel Group and Best Western in order to be able to provide air sterilization units for post-hospitalization COVID patients. So hotels with all these empty rooms and the need for business are taking on people from the NHS after they've had their hospital stay and providing a cleaner environment for them. I could never have imagined a partnership like this before, but this is something that's all thriving locally. And I think it's just not to promote, my own personal business interests, but to show that these are the things that are going to come out of it, which people are going to celebrate. These unlikely business partners that are really coming together to solve a problem through different angles. I'm sure, between us, we can find a lot more examples of them.
Yeah, I mean, it really has been very inspiring to me to see how people have responded so fast. And of course, I know that it has been easier perhaps for some SMEs than others, but agility is always a good thing, isn't it?
No, for sure. I mean, there'll always be a winner and loser anyway. That's how the economic cycle works. And unfortunately, there will be losers. Some people will have to change their business. Some people will have to shut down. That's the unfortunate reality. But as you both were discussing, some people have been quite agile. They've managed to stay ahead, and they've transformed their business, and they made this crisis work for them. That is. So I think it's an interesting journey. I mean, it's still an ongoing process, really. And when you're running businesses, you never take anything for granted. So you might be out of this phase, but you might get hit by something that you couldn't factor in. So we'll have to wait and see. I mean, some of our businesses have done quite well, but the only guarantee we have is that we may just get hit by something that we didn't foresee. So as there is some element of fingers crossed, to be honest, and we'll have to wait and see. And there are some SMEs that are really badly struggling. We'll have to see the impact of, as I was saying, the impact of both Brexit and the virus, because this is the sad part that we have in UK, because you have been hit by double disruption. So one disruption you could make yourself work, then the second disruption with lockdowns, etc. So when you're dealing with traditional businesses that's been around for 30-40 years, for them to pivot is as it's very, very difficult, because let's say the grandfather started the business, passed it on to second generation, and second generation has been in the business for a long time. And then they're having to pivot. It's challenging for them. I see that when people interact with me, I could see their frustration. But it's also, for them, the time is now to change and adapt, I think. So it's an interesting journey, I think. So we'll have to wait and see how this whole thing pans out for those type of SMEs and for those type of businesses.
Mm-hmm. So Sanjeev, let's go into specifics here. So let's talk about, it can be a fictional business, but perhaps based on some of the ones that you've encountered. What would be a typical issue or perhaps some typical issues of the type of business that you described? So let's say a second or third generation traditional business, and what can be done about the problems that they face?
The problem, and it'll be interesting to hear Natalie's experience also. So, my experience in dealing with them and some of the people I know quite well has been that there is a serious disconnect between what they thought will happen and what is playing out, and I think they are way behind the curve. And because they're way behind the curve, they're trying to throw everything on the wall to make something stick. And I think they do know that they need a helping hand. They do know that they need somebody to tell them, look, it's okay. We are here to help. I do sense that. But they also have an issue with what is the right advice for them. There's also that confidence building, and there's so many people offering so many services, so many advice that people are also confused. So I personally feel there is definitely help they need in terms of right type of advice, not just advice, a partner who will become a partner in their journey, hold their hands at least for some time to steady the ship. And that will involve the broad range of services, I think. So if somebody's looking at that space, I think this could be an opportunity for them, because people are not just looking for advice. People are also looking at, okay, how do I stabilize my business? How do I grow my business? Which market do I get in? How do I get a new source of capital? How do I get the right network for myself? So these are a lot of questions that people have started to ask, because they know the old network is not good enough to support them. The old funding source is not good enough to support them. They don't have that network and they don't have the agility as well. So all of that is hard question that they're asking. And I think there is a space where if somebody has the right type of ecosystem built in and with right people who are there to, as you said, to offer value, then I think they will be able to not just help these companies, but also help them thrive and help them turn around.
What do you think, Natalie?
It's very interesting what you said about traditional businesses and the challenge of pivoting. In the short term, I think it's easier for traditional businesses in some sense to say, this is why we need help. For instance, if you're a store or a restaurant and you've had to close your doors, obviously your employees can't work. If you run a marketing agency or PR agency, your doors aren't necessarily closed. So it may be more difficult for you to prove that, it is difficult for you to trade right now because your clients simply aren't spending the money. So the one thing that I think is changing is that people are actually talking about this now. I think one of the great things about business in the UK is, or at least in my experience, it's been very much relationship based. People do business with people they know, people they're introduced to, and people they trust. For the first time, though, I think rather than saying everything's fine, people are talking about what's not working in their businesses and finding others to connect with who can share ideas and then actually do something about it. So rather than, as you said, throwing things against the wall to try to make something stick.
Yeah, that's a very, very interesting comment, Natalie, and I totally agree with that as well. And I've seen that people collaborating, people just genuinely being more open and more supportive, particularly over the last few months. It has been very difficult, but I've seen some incredible support come through, certainly from my community. And I just also wanted to refer to the way that the market's changed for many of my, call them expert entrepreneurs. So people like consultants and coaches, people who actually build their business around themselves and around their expertise, because I have a lot of those in my community. And I think what's happened is because so many people have gone online to build personal brands, then I think a lot of the time they've struggled because the level of saturation has really reached epidemic levels. But at the same time, there is an incredible opportunity because obviously everybody's online. So just to go back to what you were saying, Sanjeev, about SMEs not really knowing where to get the right advice, this is a real issue, I think, for a lot of people because they are aware that they have to embrace online marketing in a way that perhaps they never had to before, because that is where everybody is at the moment. And I think maybe for some traditional businesses, they might have been a little bit slow to the table in terms of doing that. But I've seen a lot of people really step up and really improve their skills in that area. Just, be interested to know what you guys think.
So I see a lot of changes also happening. I mean, look, we have a common friend, so I won't mention his name because I don't have his permission. I've been talking to him and his partner about, how we could literally change the housing market. I mean, there is a lot of conversation about impact and how we can build social equity. And I like the idea that, look, the debate is wrong. It's not about equality. I am different to my brother and my sister. So the equality debate is not going to solve the problem. What we need to have is more equity. People need to have more equity. And if people had more equity in globalization, I think we will be at a different place. So I think people are, I don't want to use pivoting, but I think they're also, I think probably transformation is the right word that I'm looking for. I've seen the housing market looking to transform itself, looking to target maybe a space which is left wide open by people who are the rent market. So we are looking at developing some of these more social equity product there, and we can discuss that later because I don't want to create a problem by discussing some of these confidential matter. But there are models being developed, subscription based, and where people can build in their own equity. So let's say people had no deposit for the business, they could subscribe to let's say a sustainable new age living home, and then by staying in it and by paying the subscription over 2 years, they could build that equity, and that will then transform itself into the deposit that a bank would ask to finance the mortgage. So there is a lot of as Natalie was saying, and as both of you were discussing, there are some new ideas coming in. So we will see some changes in the market. We will see transformation in the market, and I think this is where people with real experience, Jane, will be able to help these companies who are looking to pivot, who are looking to transform themselves. So I see the personal branding space, and it's getting crowded where everybody has become an expert, and that's a good thing. Everybody has to earn their living, but also what needs to happen is you need real experience of running a business, and if you have a real experience of running a business, then I think you can really get deep dive into the detail in terms of what sort of help people need, what sort of resources people need, and can you help them with those type of resources, etc. That is key, I think, and that's where the SMEs in UK across the world really need a lot of help.
And the changes are really in the resources and the implementation. It's good to do the thinking and to put people on the right track, but at the end of the day, they need to have the resources and they need to implement, don't they?
Absolutely.
So, Natalie, you work for luxury brands as well, and are just interested to know, how has that market fared over the last year or so?
What's interesting about the luxury industry is obviously they vary, but unlike in 2008 with the crash of the stock market, for people who are the main targets for luxury brands, the stock market has been relatively stable. And a lot of people have, been willing to spend money on comforts at home, in brands they can enjoy from home. I don't know what's going on, for instance, in the private jet market currently, the yachting market currently, if it involves, so many new rules in terms of social distancing. I think, luxury, technology, healthcare, the things we can, and I find that we have in common is going forward, companies are going to be lean, green, and transparent. So whatever business you're in, you're going to look at being leaner, maximizing your costs, maximizing your utility. Greener, they're going to also find a way to be more sustainable by utilizing resources more effectively and then wasting less in doing so. And they're going to be transparent. Social media, as you said, is becoming very saturated, but we're already seeing it diversifying. I've just joined Clubhouse. If you know Clubhouse, that's an interesting new one. And then people are also, on the transparency side, collaborating more than ever before, sharing what's working for them, sharing what's not, and then thriving with other people when they find out what does work, rather than constantly seeing people as competition.
So do you think, Natalie, that we are moving more towards a collaborative society? I mean, I'm interested to ask that question to both of you, really, as a result of what's happened in these double challenges.
I certainly hope so. Definitely a fan of capitalism and individual responsibility, but having the communication, having the open communication that allows you to thrive while helping others thrive at the same time. I had a story on that, but it's just escaped me. Sanjeev, how about you?
No, I agree with you. I'm seeing collaboration for sure. I think people have realized that we do need a society. We do need an organized society. And I think it's not just the pandemic thing. It's also, we've seen what's happened in the US. We've seen what happened with Brexit. We've seen what happens across Europe as well. So I think people are realizing that, no, we have to find a way to come together. I mean, it's not just the businesses. I think businesses have also understood that they have a role to play in the society. And there is a lot of, as I was saying, there is a lot of debate about, as Natalie said, that, capitalism is not working for a lot of people. So I think it's in the interest of businesses as well as the government, as well as free nations, free world, if I can put it that way, to kind of tweak capitalism that in a way that it delivers for a larger audience. So I think there has to be collaboration. Businesses, people, governments will probably have to collaborate. So we've seen one part where you had people like Mr. Trump going it alone, America first, and we are seeing the second phase of it where people realize maybe going it alone doesn't really work, and especially if you're in a pandemic, there are no boundaries as such. You can't just keep a virus away by building a wall, really. So I think we'll have to wait and see, but I would concur with Natalie that I think collaboration will be the name of the game. I think people are collaborating. You're building businesses through collaboration. So I think we'll have to wait and see how it all plays out.
And of course, collaboration actually gets expressed a lot of the time in partnerships, doesn't it, Sanjeev?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, in our case, look, I mean, we have built some great partnership. We have invested ourselves in those great partnership. So it takes time. Building relationship, as Natalie was saying, is key. And if you haven't invested yourself in that relationship, and if you're not willing to be there for your partner, then that is not the right relationship. So yeah, we have seen ourselves in our own businesses. I've seen the benefit of investing heavily and deeply in our partners and in the partnership. And that there are things that you will have to face together, and there's the thing that you will have to face alone as a business. So so that's the key, understanding the role that each partner is, understanding what value people are bringing in that on the table through that collaboration, and what value is being created and how it will be shared. I think these are all key to keeping that partnership.
Natalie, do the businesses that you support, do they engage in more partnerships? Are they engaging in more partnerships at the moment, would you say?
Oh, more than ever before. I wasn't a fan of Brexit. I'm certainly not a fan of the pandemic. Nobody is. But instead of looking backwards and saying what's happened to us, everyone's interested in moving forward. Everyone's interested in finding a way to thrive despite what's going on around them. And they're really doing that by finding ways, as you said, to Sanjeev, to bring value to other companies. Rather than what can I sell to you, it's what can I bring to you that can benefit you? And then from that relationship, we can both thrive.
Oh, that's beautifully expressed, Natalie. I love that.
Well, it sounds nice on paper, right? We just have to make it work in real life.
I'm a great believer in the power of relationships, and I'm very, very passionate about collaborations and about partnerships and about working with people, and I really think that that's what makes the world of business go round more and more these days. So, this is all music to my ears. So, what help can SMEs get? Because traditionally, it's been beyond their budget, hasn't it, to go to the big management consultancies, for example, if they get into trouble. There's a whole industry there that is set up to support larger businesses, but SMEs are often left to themselves, aren't to try and figure it out.
Yeah, that's a very interesting question, Jane. And that's what I'm seeing. I just don't think it's time for somebody to just go and attend a workshop and then come out with all the solution. So there are a lot of those things, as you know, available from different people. But I think, as you rightly said, so what I think what the SMEs are looking for, and what I see, and also from our own experience, is they as I was saying before, they are not just looking for somebody to tell them what's wrong, because they already know bits and pieces of what's wrong with their business. They need somebody to help them validate their own understanding of their business, but they also need somebody to tell them that, look, there is a 40,000 feet view of the bigger picture. There is a landscape beyond which there is a better world out there for you. So they need that help with a realignment, repositioning of their business thesis, and not just that. They need somebody to go beyond that. They need somebody to help them with the go-to-market, to help them expand and build new partnership, and have those type of resources in place where they can select 4 or 5 potential partners for these businesses and say, sit down with them, develop the right chemistry, and then maybe with 1 or 2 of them build the right partnership, and then go to a newer market and thrive in those markets. But also go a bit beyond that. If they would need access to capital, they would need access to additional add-on resources, then that ecosystem approach helps, because you are going beyond just giving them the right partners, just helping them with their go-to market. You're also helping them access the right type of capital through the right type of sources. So it's like, it's in a way to describe to describe it. I would think they would need somebody to be a partner in their journey, who has invested and vested interest in that journey, and who's not going to cost them a lot of money, who is going to probably come to them and say, look, these are my cost, just take some of my cost, and then I will help you deliver results, and once that has been delivered, then give me part of that upside. I think that model will probably is what these SMEs would like, and I think that's where I think an ecosystem approach works very well.
I'm actually seeing that more in the marketing space as well, coming through, that rather than somebody charging a very high upfront fee, that they will be selective about the people that they take on to help, and then they will effectively invest in their businesses by, as you said, charging them a low initial fee or a monthly fee or something like that, and really just putting their skin in the game in terms of helping them actually achieve those results. So I think that's a fantastic approach. How about you, Natalie? What do you think of that approach?
I think it's a great idea, particularly for SMEs, as it's not as common that a smaller business will look for help in sustaining and growing, and also that they would budget for it. If there's a business model with a predictability of cost each month, Obviously, SaaS models are not new, but I think in this space, it's not necessarily considered by a very large group of SMEs that could benefit from it.
Fantastic. So Sanjeev, taking it further, how have you actually translated that idea into a real concept that can help businesses that have been affected by Brexit and the pandemic?
That's interesting that we are having this discussion. So, I think all of three of us have had conversation with friends who are running businesses, and they would ask you for help, and we don't have the bandwidth to just take time out of our existing businesses and existing obligations and say, look, I will give you 2 hours of my day. It's simply just not possible, and that's why I had a chat with Natalie and a couple of other people, and we've known each other for a number of years. So I thought, maybe we could do something. We could do something that will have a very strong impact in terms of not just helping this selected group of SMEs. So I think if we create a structure where we are giving our time and we are bringing in friends who have serious expertise, I think you could populate the structure. That's, I think, what we will do, with right people, with right team, and around that build an ecosystem where we could interview a selected group of SMEs, sit down with them, and then if we decide that okay, these are maximum, let's say 50 people, 50 SMEs in the UK or anywhere else we want to work with, then we could sit down with them and we could pretty much create a roadmap, as Natalie was saying, and there they have the predictability, they have their cost pretty much, there is all the certainty, and they understand how much we are investing in them. I mean, not just by subsidizing the cost, but also making sure that they are able to plug into not just our network, not just in our partnership, and not just in our own value that we are bringing on the table, but also the larger ecosystem. So that's something that we are considering right now and we are discussing. So we have a number of businesses also part of the ecosystem. So it's not just the individuals and it's not just professionals who will be part of the ecosystem and helping us help these SMEs, but there are also businesses that I think we are roping in. These are businesses that are sizable businesses. They have strong presence in various markets across a range of diverse sectors. So the value then for a potential partner or potential SME or customer will be that when they get help from us, they are supported by the businesses, the value of the network, and we really do become a partner in their journey. That would be the aim of building that ecosystem. And I think that's something we feel that is needed. I think all of us could make the contribution. So there will be a business, obviously, the business has to work, but also the impact that we will have will be immense, I believe, on helping these SMEs go to new markets, help them thrive, help them turn around, and all of that.
Yeah, and I think it's such a great idea. And Sanjeev, you really are a global entrepreneur, aren't you? So you talked about new markets. You actually have a global business, don't you?
Yeah, so we do have, I mean, necessity is the mother of invention, really, right? So, you have, I mean, and that's where our strengths are, that you do need to have strength in a global marketplace, because if you don't, then you will really struggle when you have a Brexit situation or when you have a pandemic situation. So yeah, that's why that's what I thought we could build an ecosystem where the networks that we have built, the businesses that we have built, the people that we have, they can all be part of it. So we can help not just with the support on the advisory side, on the management consultancy side, on the realignment side, on the capital raising side, on the go-to-market side, on the transformation side, but we can also help them with all the other things they would need. For example, they have to go to workshop to help learn how to do speedy decision making, how to handle their stress and all of that. We're trying to build all of that in one-stop shop. So, we hope that we'll be able to really be a partner for these guys. And let's see. I mean, I have been talking to people and they really like the idea. They do want to be a part of it. And that's why I was talking to Natalie and yourself and others. And I said, look, we will need to make sure it's a closed group of people that we work with. So we won't be able to work with 500 customers initially. We'll probably have to go with 50 to 100 max initially, and then see how we can deliver quality for these customers. And then after that, we can probably look at growing ourselves. But for the time being, I think being selective is very, very important.
That sounds so good. So, Natalie, you work with various businesses. So, what kind of businesses do you think might benefit from something like that?
The UK is a very service-based economy. So I think there's no one particular business that would benefit most. I think the great thing about this is it's something you can do from home. And the businesses that will thrive from it are, I think, anything you can do from home that's not particularly brick and mortar. Also, what I like about it is it gives the opportunity to bring in so many experts who are looking for new markets, who are looking for new customers. I think between us, we know so many experts who perhaps whose services are being underutilized, from workplace wellness to career coaching, as you said, to managing stress, to be able to make speedy decisions in order to pivot the focus of the business. And having a closed group in order to do that creates some trust that allows people to be more open about it. I've read so many things by Guy Kawasaki, who still today, he was the chief evangelist of Apple. Most people know him in tech, but he always said, if you have an idea of who your customer is, do as much research on your customer as possible. If you find out a different profile of customer in terms of individual or businesses using your product that you didn't expect to, don't be beholden to your original idea. Drop everything and learn how to cater to that customer. I hope I'm not quoting this person out of context, because that was my reading from his work rather than what he said specifically. But that really stayed with me, because we're all adapting. We're not staying beholden to our original idea of how our business would work, what market it's supposed to work in, and finding ways to speak openly about it to see what we can achieve in a new market and who else could benefit from it.
Fabulous. That's great, Natalie. Thank you. And one of the things that Sanjeev and I discussed is the power of a network and how important it is to have other people who are on the journey with you. And I think that is so critical for business owners, because it can be a very, very lonely place, can't it? Running a business and handling lots of employees and clients and issues within the business. We need support, don't we, Sanjeev?
Yeah, that's why when I remember when you would see when I was growing up and I would go to my grandmother's place, and you will see a doctor carrying his bag, and you think, whoa, this bag is magical. And so that kind of stayed with me, that and that's why I thought the system that we are putting in, we should call it the bag, and everything is in the bag, so people feel confident that, okay, these guys are not just a consultant who are willing to come and help me. These are entrepreneurs. They have gone through their own journey. And as Natalie was saying, that we all know a number of very, very seasoned people who have started their businesses from scratch, built it, and reached a phase where they don't want to retire, or they want to do also something else. So that's something that I think we can offer to people. And as you said, there is serious amount of value in that network. And it's not just a network where you go in, you're on your own. It's that the network is there for you. It's there offering you value continuously. The network that is working for you, working with you as a partner. And that's what I thought we'll create a business model where we will have a standards package for people who want to come in and utilize the benefit of being in the ecosystem. And we'll also have a premium package. And all of these businesses will be obviously personalized, so there will be no one size fit all approach, because we will need to literally interview and talk to each of these businesses, screen all of these businesses to understand if we can offer them something. If we can't offer them something, we don't need to onboard them, if I could use that terminology. So that's what we are in that discussion phase with people. Every time I have been talking with, whether they're in the healthcare business, I just remembered you asked Natalie that question. So whether they're in the healthcare, manufacturing, services, I've seen when I've talked to those entrepreneurs, promoters, I've seen that they are quite attracted to the idea. And that's what we had this initial discussion, that we will set up a criteria. Some of these initial criteria will be that we will work with companies that have upwards of £1 million in revenue, at least a minimum of £1 million in revenue. We will work with companies that don't have more than 3-4 partners, because that complicates the matter for us. And we work with promoters who understand what value we are bringing on the table. So it'll be a selective process, selection process, and then we'll design a system where we'll work, as Natalie and you said, we will give them predictability, and we all understand the SaaS model, etc. So we'll work with what they can afford on a monthly basis. And then when there is result, only then we'll say, okay, we will take some of the upside. And that model is much better than any of the existing consultancy firm, because as Natalie was saying, this what we're trying to create doesn't really exist anywhere. It's supported all of the people involved and the partners in the ecosystem. They all breed business. They've all been entrepreneurs. They're all seasoned entrepreneurs themselves, with their own infrastructure, resources. So all of that.
That's so exciting. So, Sanjeev, I can foresee a stampede. So if our podcast listeners think this sounds absolutely amazing, this is just what I've been looking for, who should they contact?
I think maybe what we will do is we will have a common contact available. So we'll make it available where they can connect with you after this. So if they have any question, and as you said, if they have an interest, maybe they can connect with you, if that's okay with you. And then what we'll do is all of us can convene and then see how best to approach them. Maybe the next step will be we'll get to hear from them. Then we'll select who we need to have a chat with. So maybe we can get on a call with each one of them, depending on the time and resources that we have available. And then we will see, going back to what I was saying, if we think we can add value to them, if we think this is going to work for us and them, then I think we could just design a tailor-made package for them and then take it from there. That's why we are keeping it off grid, because what we don't want is a rush where people can come in and tell us that, okay, we appreciate that. I would love to help as many people as possible. But all of us, all three of us and other people involved in the business and in the ecosystem, they all have a busy life already. So we will have to be very, very selective. And that's why we are trying to keep it off grid, very, very exclusive, so we don't get inundated by requests. And, we won't be able to help also everybody. It's just not possible for us to help everybody. So we will have to be very, very selective. And maybe it's important that people who will be interested, they understand that. The contact will be probably, will have to be initially you, Jane, if that's okay.
Yeah.
They can connect with you, and then we'll just have a team take it from there.
Fabulous. Well, thank you so much, Natalie and Sanjeev, for joining me today. It's been such an interesting discussion. I'm really very excited about the concept of BAG and how it can help small business owners, particularly ones that have been impacted by Brexit and the pandemic. So thank you, both of you, for such a lively and interesting debate. See you again soon.
Thank you very much, Jane. This has been very helpful.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you, Natalie. Have a good evening, both of you.
Thanks for listening to the Smart Connector podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, why not head over to janebeyler.com and order a copy of my free report on building your personal brand. I'd love to connect with you on social media. And finally, don't forget to like and subscribe to my podcast so that you never miss a show. Thanks for listening in, and see you soon.